Hey guys, so welcome to my podcast. It's me, the famed historian EDJ here to get many more history facts wrong and mispronounce many more names. So hi everyone. I'm trying out something new. As you see, I've upgraded my setup a little. It's like I have been upgrading. Like before, you used to see my messy, crappy room, and then I bought a green screen so I can have this cool little grid behind me. And now, because I noticed in my videos, I have this thing where I have what do I say? I get vocal fatigue very easily, in that I'm not able to like talk for long. Especially when I'm like mass recording, like some of my longer series, like I do definitely get more tired. Like I do not have a streamer's endurance to like record videos for like 7+ hours. I think like maybe 1 hour or 2 hours is like maybe my limit, but even then. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because I bought this cool little microphone stand with this cool little thing. It's supposed to enhance my voice. And in the past, I used to grab the microphone and just put it to my mouth. But I was having issues doing that because sometimes my microphone, I think because it's moved, it's weirdly connected to my computer, so if I move it too much, I'll lose some audio. And some recordings of some videos requested, I did recordings of them, but then the audio cuts off, so I bought this cool thing. And I think it helps because I get to speak more softly, because I don't, and you'll be able to hear me more clearly since my mouth is like literally right here. And this little screen thing is supposed to like, I guess, get rid of background sound. I don't know, like Prussia. So I don't know. But we're not talking about Prussia. We're talking about the Sassanid Empire. And yeah, we're going to be looking at the Khosrau series by Extra History, and I think this series will be a cool little transition before we get to early Muslim expansion from kings and generals. And we're no stranger to Khosrau. I believe we've covered him in the past, and the Sassanids, obviously, with Rome, and also I think Dovahadi talked about him, with his wars with the Byzantine Empire and being a really dangerous adversary to Rome. So that's, if this is the same Khosrau. I don't know if there's been multiple Khosraus, and that might be another, but either way, I think we're in the right ballpark with the Sassanid Empire / Middle East, like around that area. And yeah, it'll be cool to see, learn more about this guy, because he has appeared on this channel before. It's just, I'm a little it'll be cool to see more of him. And I really do like Extra History videos, so yeah, I don't really have much else to add other than we should get right into it, huh? So let's watch Khosrau Anushirawan, like father, like son. Extra History, Part 1.
To tell the story of Khosrau Anushirawan, ruler of a golden age, we first have to understand his father, Kavad. Kavad ruled the great empire of Iran. The West called it Persia, and he saw that empire brought to the brink of collapse. And boy oh boy, did he not enjoy that experience. Prince Kavad spent his childhood like most young boys do, held hostage by his father's greatest enemy. His captors were the Hephthalites, a Central Asian tribe that had pushed their way up to the borders of Iran. They were new, they were powerful, and they had made the Iranians very, very nervous. Their relationship had started so well, though. They had helped Kavad's father win his throne, they had fought at his side in a couple of wars, but then they got into an argument over who controlled a town on their shared border. Naturally, Kavad's father had gone to war over it, and he had lost. He had lost so badly that the Hephthalites actually took him captive, and he'd had to pay his own ransom just so he could go back to ruling Iran again.
Wow.
He was a little testy about that, and so of course he went to war with them a second time.
Oh dear. So, already, not shy to get into war, and, sorry, that's hilarious. I've never heard that before, you gotta pay your own ransom, that's hilarious. Um, yeah, this is all completely new to me, so I think I really do like watching these videos, because I feel like what I really like about history videos is that I'm always learning something new. You know, I don't think there'll ever be a point where I know it all, and I'm really happy about that, because it just makes this, interesting, you know what I mean?
And he lost again. This time, he was forced to give them Kavad as a hostage, because
Yeah, I've heard about... there have been examples of that throughout history, you know, like when a monarch or kingdom is bested, usually a hostage is taken. Like, we've seen it plenty of times, like in Greece, and even like in the medieval era, and yeah, just taking... I mean, I also think of like Vlad the Impaler. Him and his brother were like, you know, in a sense, hostages to the Ottoman court. So yeah, there have been times in history where that has been a precedent, like taking a king's or monarch's or leader's child, I guess, to keep them in line, you know, good behavior. And yeah, it is just an interesting thing. Also kind of a bargaining chip, you know, like, hey, you act out. You know what I mean? They just does the the thing. So yeah, definitely. But joke's on you, I don't care about my son. No, I'm joking. Imagine.
surely he wouldn't attack them again if they held his son.
Oh snap!
TurboTax free edition.
Stupid ad, but oh snap, he's still Yo, did I predict? Is my predicting abilities getting better the longer this channel goes on? Like, but, yeah, legit though, huh? Yeah, I said, hot jokes on you, I don't care about your son. And he still attacked. Wow. He must not really give a F or something, I'm not sure.
Though. I mean, the third time's the charm, right? And he didn't get captured this time. He got killed, along with the rest of the Iranian army. The Hephthalites pushed forward, and the Iranians were in a panic. Kavad's uncle had been put on the throne, but man, he did not know what to do. Enter Sukra, a minister to the former Shah and leader of a powerful noble family. He took command of the army and managed to stop the Hephthalite advance. Sukra then negotiated the terms of a new truce, agreeing to pay a heavy tribute in exchange for peace and the return of all Iranian property, including the dead Shah's son, Kavad. Sukra returned home a hero. People celebrated him in the streets. But Kavad wasn't so lucky. Though he was the previous Shah's son, the noble families of Iran decided to elect Kavad's uncle as the new Shah. After all, how could they trust this boy who had just spent years as a prisoner of the enemy? One noble even wanted to see Kavad executed, but Sukra, who had
Okay, so, wait.
just gone to all this trouble rescuing the kid, managed to convince the nobles to merely imprison Kavad instead. So the poor kid...
Okay, so Shukra already kind of a bro. I mean, I guess imprisonment's better than just being murdered, so I guess, yeah, he did come through in a sense. But yeah, Shukra just showed up out of nowhere and just fixed everyone's problems. Fixed all the problems. Or at least, you know, put a band-aid on it. So yeah, definitely a big player. And I'm just thinking... That's such an interesting thing. Like, my reasoning before, you know, the rejection of Kavad was like, you know, I guess keep the uncle there because he's easier to control since he seems incompetent, and, you know, you can kind of work through an incompetent person or influence them. That was my original guess. Or I thought for a second they were just gonna make Shukra the new ruler since he was making big moves, but that reasoning makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you can't trust someone who just spent like a lot of years in the enemy, right? Living amongst the enemy. I guess there are factors such as, did they like living amongst the enemy? Did the enemy treat them well? I guess they don't fully know everything, right? So that kind of is the cause of caution. Though that is I can see a definitely fair thing, even if like you know, he hated living amongst them. It's like you still don't know, and you gotta be like safe. So I think that's just interesting reasoning and very practical. Yeah, you how can you trust someone like they won't screw you over your own, you know, empire to appease their former captors that they may have developed Stockholm syndrome with, you know? And yeah, that was interesting.
It got sent away yet again, this time to the Fortress of Oblivion. I am not kidding, that was the prison's actual
The
name.
Fortress of a that's what kind of D&D naming is that? I'm joking, but that's actually a pretty hard. That name goes hard. Um, yeah, that just inspires the spirit. That sounds like a freaking like death metal cover, like rock cover. You know, the Fortress of Oblivion. I could just see it now in the background. I don't know, but might have the coolest prison name. Might win that. Granted, I don't know many prison names, but so far that might be a winner.
Don't say history never gave you anything. Honestly, Kavad had been better off with the Hephthalites. Sure, he had been their prisoner, but they always treated him like more of a guest. And frankly, prisons don't earn names like Fortress of Oblivion for being comfortable. Somehow, though, Kavad managed to escape, and when he did, he ran right back to the Hephthalites. He promised them gold, and in return, they promised to help him win back his rightful throne.
Wow. Isn't that kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that the nobles didn't trust Kavad because they thought he would help the Hephthalites? And now, in a funny way, by them not trusting him, it's like gone full circle. That's like some Greek mythology self-fulfilling prophecy right there. You know? Funny how that works, huh?
Thus, in 488 CE, Kavad marched to the capital at Ctesiphon with a sizable foreign army at his heels. This time, the nobles sided with him, as did Sukra. They deposed his uncle without a fight, and Kavad was confirmed as the new Shah. Sukra became his advisor and tutor, since the new Shah was still pretty young and had definitely not spent much time in Iran recently. At first, Kavad welcomed Sukra's advice, but he eventually came to realize that his so-called advisor wanted him as a puppet, not a Shah. When people had problems...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, at least from what little I know of the uncle, like his thing, it seems like, yeah, they would use, the nobles and them would use, him as a puppet since he didn't know what the heck he was doing, and I guess they're hoping now to do the same with this boy. And they definitely only sided with him because of his army, right? Like, you know, because he literally marched with a huge army that they originally couldn't beat. So, yeah, definitely just self-interest working there, you know? Let's see.
in need of solving, they always brought those problems to Sukra. And when Kavad tried to weigh in with his own suggestions, everybody ignored him.
Yeah, Sukra's an interesting character. Like, at first I said, yeah, definitely helped mediate a really tense situation, you know, with the original Heptalite invasion. But now, and he definitely at least did help Kavad in a sense. He saved his life, though obviously he is exchanged for the Fortress of Oblivion, which doesn't sound like which maybe perhaps could have been a fate worse than death if he had remained there. But you know, either way, like already like these like little iffy feelings definitely I'm having towards Sukra. Definitely there is some self-interest at play, and he definitely does want to, you know, move up. And I said earlier, like, I thought they were gonna just make him the new Shah, right? Because after what he did, and it seems like in a weird way, he's kind of putting himself in a position to kind of be that, not in official capacity, you know, but like definitely an influence, right? Like he's the guy everyone comes to, so in practice mainly. So there is some scheming, I feel like, that's going on with him, you know?
Soon realized that the crown he wore and the throne he sat on were mere decoration. Sukra truly ruled this empire.
Yeah, you know, That's kind of the thing, like, the throne doesn't make you, right? It's the man who makes the throne, not the throne who makes the man, you know? The throne's just a decorated piece of furniture, it's who sits on it. Or, in this case, who doesn't, you know? Um, so yeah, it's definitely just who's the one making the moves. And one can be technically a ruler of a country even if they're not the official king. You know, we've seen that in history, right? Kind of reminds me like that baller Tywin Lannister line, like, he who calls himself a king is no true king, or something like that. Like, I'm butchering the thing. My fellow Game of Thrones fans, you know what I mean. Gosh, Tywin Lannister was such a baller. I love Tywin Lannister. He's such a great character.
Now, it is true that a handful of noble families had always been the real power behind the throne of Iran. It had been that way for centuries, but they were supposed to stay behind the throne.
Dang it.
Oversaw specific regions on the Shah's behalf, much like feudal lords. And while the locals might serve their noble families, those families were supposed to serve the Shah. It had worked this way for so long that the biggest noble families, like Sukra's, had been in power even longer than the Sasanian dynasty Kavad descended from. And yeah, the nobles had always meddled in royal affairs. Kavad's uncle was not—
Yeah, we've seen this a lot in history. I often attribute it to, yeah, the medieval era. You know, there's the king, and then there are the vassals slash lords, and then there's the, you know, peasants and whatnot. And yeah, like, whatever territory the lord or vassal rules, like, the people are more inclined to be loyal to them, and ideally the vassal in turn loyal to the king, though there are times in history where that's just not the case. A lot of times, actually. You know, where, and then a vassal gets too powerful, rebels. We've seen it a lot. Like I said, I often think about, like, the medieval era or stuff, right? And at times the king can just kind of become a prop or just a figurehead. So that makes a lot of sense now as to why, you know, Shukra? I'm sorry, like, names take a while to register in my head, especially in these newer series, so I butcher them more, especially in the first episode or first few episodes. But I could see now, like, with a family that's technically had so much power and influence, he's just doing what his family's been doing, so yeah, I guess Kavad's gonna have to completely reinvent the system, huh? That's what I'm guessing. We're gonna see some major reforms and changes, is what I'm guessing, towards the governmental system.
Not the first Shah they had deposed, and he would not be the last, but the way Sukra was now holding court and giving orders on the Shah's behalf, that was not done. After 5 years of struggling to assert control over his own advisor, Kavad ordered Sukra to leave the capital and go back to his home city. Sukra obeyed, but only because it put him out of the Shah's reach. From such a safe distance, he could brag openly about how Kavad wouldn't even have a throne if not for him. And even living away from the capital, he held all the power. The empire's taxes were still brought to him. He still commanded the army. Kavad had nothing. The stars had aligned for Sukra. To all appearances, he stood on the brink of claiming the throne for himself. This is what Kavad had counted on. If he knew one thing about Iran's noble families, it was this. Through all the centuries of intrigue, manipulation, and outright bloodshed, the one thing that always served to keep noble families in check was their rivalry with other noble families. Now, with Sukra visibly rising to new heights of—
Oh, okay. I see where this is all going. So yeah, Sukra's becoming way too powerful. And then, as we know, people, especially in these really intricate political rivalries slash situations, will often team up against the biggest threat, you know? And since Sukra seems to be that, everyone else, all the rival noble families would have incentive to screw him over, if you would. So I'm assuming that Kavad is going to play this to his advantage and essentially start playing chess, with all of them and get them to turn on each other to really curb, Sucra's power and rising influence. At least that's what I'm guessing would happen, but you never know. History has a funny way of surprising me.
Power, and openly bragging about it no less, his most bitter rivals took action. Egged on by Kavad, they gathered and raised their own army to march on Sucra's home. Soon, they deposited both Sucra and his vast treasury at Kavad's feet. The young Shah had eliminated the greatest threat to his reign while barely lifting a finger.
Baller. Legit though, like that actually is what I predicted. I'm happy about that. But yeah, that's just smart. He got rid of the biggest issue, because I was like, this guy has way too much power and influence, and yeah, overall just a smart way to handle it. Obviously Kavad has a brain on him, and I'm really looking forward to just seeing how he keeps maneuvering through this.
Sucra was executed and removed from the board, but Kavad was just getting started. Never again would he allow a noble family to rise against him the way Sucra just had. The nobles must be cut off at the knees. See, a new movement had been brewing in Iran ever since the death of Kavad's father. The threat of a Hephthalite invasion had sent a ripple of fear through the empire, and in that atmosphere, people had turned to new faiths with new answers. One priest in particular, named Mazdak, had split from the official tenets of Iran's Zoroastrian religion and begun preaching a new doctrine. Mazdak believed in peace, free love, and eating veggies. He was basically a 5th century hippie. And he argued for the complete redistribution of wealth and the peaceful elimination of entrenched upper-class nobility like Sucra. Kavad liked that last idea very much. So the Shah gave up meat, embraced free love, and became a Mazdakite. With Kavad's blessing, Mazdak threw open the imperial granaries and began distributing food to the people. They also divided up land that had been held by the noble families for centuries, weakening noble control of the realm. For the first time in Kavad's reign, the people loved him. Isn't
that just the idea of bread in circuses? Or at least the bread part. Yeah, winning the people over. And yeah, overall, that's just, I said there's gonna have to be like major changes in the way things done. I didn't expect him to just completely convert to hippieism. Hippieism? That's what, it's not a word, but I'm gonna call it that. By becoming a hippie, Kavad has now become the most powerful man in the world. So yeah, winning people over with, bread and circus, granted, you know what I mean. And yeah, overall, yeah, it's smart, because like, I think also of like what was I getting on? Oh yeah, obviously nobles can be huge problems. I think of like the Holy Roman Empire, and I think its influence in cities near Italy were severely challenged when I believe the monarch and the pope were at rivals, and sometimes the nobles would just kind of be thorns in king's side, monarch's side, and obviously, as we saw before, they can raise their own armies in their areas that they influence. They can sometimes make the people would feel more incentive to join with the noble who they directly work for, rather than the overall major emperor or monarch who they know little, next to little nothing about, right? And so this is smart. Definitely curb the noble's power and just get the people to like you directly. Yeah, handle that like a G. Kavad handled that like a G, my friend.
Sang his praises the way they used to sing Sucra's for saving them from the Hephthalites. But both the nobility and the high-ranking priesthood, those powers which had stood behind the throne for centuries, hated him. Kavad had made a mistake. Maybe he thought he could restrain Mazdak's more ambitious ideas about equality, or maybe he thought that this popularity with the people would keep him safe, but he had reached too far, too fast. The nobles rose up against him, deposed him, and once again threw him into the Fortress of Oblivion. Boy, I love that name. They then put his younger brother on the throne.
Okay. So that completely backfired. Again, history, man. It just keeps, you know, so many twists and turns. That's why I really like it. It's like watching a show, except, you know, there's no screenwriters, so it's harder to predict. Like, you know, this just random crap happens all the time in real life. And that makes sense. Win the people over, but still you have the nobles to worry about, and I don't think the nobles like losing their power and prestige, so they're not just gonna give that up completely without a fight. And yeah, back to the Fortress of Oblivion, huh? Wow.
Throne to undo Mazdek's reforms and be their new puppet Shah. Alas, though the Fortress of Oblivion continued to have a very, very cool name, it also continued to be very, very bad at containing Kavad.
Yeah, a really cool name. I think maybe perhaps the coolest prison name I've ever heard. But it seems to be really bad at keeping people in, because this guy just keeps getting out. It's like freaking Arkham Asylum. It's just like, it's like a revolving door. You walk in and you walk out immediately. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Kavad escaped once again and fled to his old friends, the Hephthalites. I think it might be time to face the hard truth that the Fortress of Oblivion was just not a very good prison. Yes, I am disappointed too. The Hephthalites were just as happy to accept Kavad's money as last time, though, so once again he boldly marched up to Ctesiphon. His poor brother, who had never really been that into this whole Shah idea anyway, quickly stepped aside, and for the second time, Kavad became the Shah of Iran. But it's fair to say at this point that Kavad's reign had thus far been troubled. One disaster after another, really. And all of these upheavals had left the empire weak. The army was still under the fractured control of the noble families, and Iran's wealth was being sapped away year after year in costly tributes to appease the Hephthalites. And to top it off, Mazdek and his followers continued to push their aggressive social reforms forward, even after Kavad had tried to tone down his support of their ideals. Things did not look good for the K-Man, but he was undeterred. Kavad believed he could bring his empire back from the brink of ruin, but it would take a lifetime, perhaps even 2 lifetimes. Luckily, he might just have 2 lifetimes to work with. Just before he had been deposed, a new wife had given birth to his 3rd son. The boy was young, but Kavad saw potential in him. This child could be molded to carry on the legacy that Kavad now hoped to build. That boy's name was Khosrau.
That's pretty cool. Some background about the situation of the Empire and what the heck is going on. So definitely a cool little origin story / establishing of the scene, if you would. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing a bit more of this series. So yeah, tomorrow I'll get back. We'll see part 2. Until then, bye everyone.